A TikToker stopped filming to save a child. Now she's more famous than ever. Someone help him, please. The scream came from somewhere beyond the crowd, high, panicked, and far too small to ignore. Kayla was in the middle of a perfect shot. Ring light balanced, makeup flawless, her TikTok live climbing past 10,000 viewers in under 2 minutes. She was trending. Again. And then she saw him, a boy no older than 6, slipping beneath the edge of the pier, small hands clawing at the air. Her followers were already spamming the chat. What's going on, Kayla didn't think. She dropped the phone, the live feed, showing nothing but blue sky as she ran. What happened in the next 60 seconds would turn a viral influencer into something else entirely, and force her to choose what kind of fame she really wanted. If you find value in real stories told with clarity and truth, make sure to subscribe to stay informed with Real Father Story. The drop. Kayla's heels slipped on the slick boards as she ran. The boy's head vanished for half a second, just enough for her stomach to lurch, then bobbed up again, his tiny mouth gulping air. "Hold on," she yelled, though she doubted he could hear over the wind and the slap of water against the pilings. Her phone lay face down behind her live stream, still running. She could almost hear the flood of confused comments. Is this a prank? What's happening? Where'd she go? But none of that mattered. Only the boy's wide, terrified eyes mattered. She dropped to her knees, splinters biting into her skin, and reached. The gap between the pier and the water was wider than she thought, just far enough that she'd have to go in after him. Coal black water, makeup ruined, hair matted, the kind of image her followers would never forgive. Her body hesitated, her mind didn't. She kicked off her shoes and slid over the edge. The shock of the water punched the breath from her lungs, every nerve screaming. The boy was thrashing now, his small arms weak, the water pulling at him like it wanted to keep him. Kayla wrapped one arm around him, kicking hard toward the pier. "Grab her!" someone shouted above. 2 pairs of hands reached down, pulling them both up, dripping and gasping onto the boards. The boy collapsed against her, coughing. She pushed his wet hair from his forehead and asked the only thing that mattered, "Where's your mom?" Before he could answer, a man's voice boomed from the crowd, "That's my son." Kayla turned and froze. The man pushing through the onlookers wasn't relief or gratitude in motion. He was pure anger, the wrong kind of thanks. The man shoved through the crowd, water still dripping from Kayla's hair onto the boards. He yanked the boy from her arms so abruptly she almost fell backward. "What were you thinking?" he barked, not at her, but at the child. "You know better than to run off." Kayla blinked, still catching her breath. "I'm sorry, but The man cut her off with a glare sharp enough to slice through the cold. "I didn't ask you to touch him." The boy's small hand clutched at his father's sleeve, eyes darting between them. Kayla felt heat rising under her soaked skin. "You're welcome," she said, her voice flat. That only seemed to irritate him more. "You people, always looking for a scene. Was this for your TikTok?" Her jaw clenched. "Actually, Save it," he snapped. He scooped the boy into his arms and started pushing back through the crowd. Not a thank you. Not even a nod. Kayla stared after them, heart still hammering from the cold and the adrenaline. Her phone lay on the boards where she'd left it, screen-cracked camera still pointing at the sky. When she picked it up, the live stream counter nearly made her drop it again. 58,000 live viewers. The chat was moving too fast to read. Clipped moments of her diving into the water were already being reposted under hashtags she'd never used. Peer rescue, real hero, not just influence. A voice behind her said, "You should see Twitter." Kayla turned to find a teenager holding up his phone, a video of her pulled from the water, already racking up hundreds of thousands of views. "Guess you're famous now," he said. But his tone wasn't admiration, it was something closer to warning. Kayla glanced back towards the pier's entrance where the father and son had disappeared. Somewhere in her gut, a new tension was coiling. This wasn't over. The name that changes everything. By the time Kayla got home, her soaked clothes clung cold against her skin, and her phone was vibrating nonstop. Mentions, tags, DMs from strangers. And in between them, one text from her manager. "Call me now." She hit dial before even dropping her bag. "You didn't tell me you jumped off a pier," he said, without a hello. "I didn't exactly plan it," Kayla replied, peeling off her damp jacket. "Kid was drowning. Kayla." His voice shifted from frantic to very, very serious. "Do you know who that kid's father is?" Her mind flashed to the man's furious face. "No, some guy with a bad attitude. That's Daniel Reeve." He let the name hang, waiting for it to click. Kayla frowned. "I'm supposed to know that name." Her manager sighed. Billionaire, shipping empire, big political donor. And here's the fun part. He's got a reputation for making problems disappear. People, stories, whatever he wants. Kayla sat down hard on the edge of her bed. "So, I rescued his kid, and instead of thanking me, he thinks I'm, what, using him for clout." "Exactly," her manager said. "And if he decides that's the story, good luck convincing anyone otherwise. He owns half the media in this city." She looked at the cracked screen of her phone. The hashtags were still multiplying. Clips of her dripping wet, pulling the boy to safety, were everywhere. Some were calling her a hero. Others were asking why she was filming in the first place. And tucked between them a new headline, "Influencer Stages Rescue for Views." Her pulse quickened. I know you didn't," her manager cut in. "But truth doesn't matter if he decides to bury you. You need to get ahead of this." "How?" There was a pause. "By talking to him. In person." Kayla stared out her window at the city lights. The last thing she wanted was to be in the same room with Daniel Reeve. But somewhere in her chest, a stubborn voice said she wasn't going to let him turn her into a villain in her own story. The meeting. Daniel Reeve didn't pick a neutral location. He summoned Kayla to a private club in the financial district, the kind with frosted glass doors, marble floors, and a dress code that made her hoodie and jeans feel like an insult before she even stepped inside. A doorman escorted her past rows of silent, suited men who all seemed to know exactly who she was. Or maybe they'd just seen the headlines. Daniel was already seated at a corner table back to the wall, a tumbler of something amber in his hand. The boy, his son, was nowhere in sight. When she approached, he didn't stand. He just looked her over, slow and deliberate, as if cataloging every flaw. "You came," he said finally. Kayla took the seat across from him. "You asked." "I didn't ask," Daniel replied. "I told you. There's a difference." The chill in his tone almost matched the pier water. "I saved your kid," she said, leaning forward. "I didn't ask for money. I didn't call the press. So maybe you could stop acting like I'm some grifter who—" "You were live streaming," he cut in. "Your phone was pointed at the water. Do you know how that looks?" She bit back her first response. "I didn't film it on purpose. I dropped the phone when I jumped in." Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly, not in disbelief, but in calculation. "Maybe, or maybe you saw an opportunity." Kayla exhaled sharply. "Why am I here?" He set his glass down with a soft clink. "Because this can go one of two ways. Either I make this story disappear, or I make you disappear from the internet. Permanently." Kayla stared at him, the weight of the threat settling in her chest. "And if I don't agree to vanish?" Daniel leaned back, a faint, cold smile playing at his mouth. Then you'd better hope the truth matters more than the story I tell. And in my world, it never does. Before she could respond, a server appeared with a sealed envelope and set it in front of her. Daniel gestured at it. Consider this incentive. Kayla's fingers hovered over the envelope, but something in Daniel's eyes told her opening it here would be a mistake. She stood, slipping it into her bag without a word. Daniel didn't stop her. Outside, the air felt sharper, the city louder. She pulled out her phone and saw a new notification, an anonymous message with a photo of her pulling the boy from the water. Only this time, there was something else in the frame. A man standing on the pier, watching. She'd never noticed him before. The shadow on the pier. Kayla zoomed in on the photo until the pixels began to break. The man stood several feet from the water's edge, hands in his coat pockets, posture too still for a bystander. No phone in his hands, no expression she could read, just watching. The streetlight caught part of his face enough to see he wasn't a stranger. She pulled up a tab on her phone and searched her own name with the new hashtags. Dozens of angles of the rescue flooded her screen, but in 3 of them, he was there. Always the same stance. Always watching her, not the boy. A chill slid down her spine. Kayla forwarded the clearest shot to her manager with a short message. Find out who this is. He called back within minutes. I've seen that guy before, he said. He works private security for Reeves' company, former military, name's Cole Stratham. Security for Daniel, she asked. More than that, her manager replied. Rumor is he's the one Reeves sends when he wants a problem handled off the books. Kayla's mind raced. Then why was he watching me? Not the kid. That, her manager said, is what should scare you. Kayla set the phone down, her fingers tightening on the table's edge. If Cole was there for her, it meant Reeve had been watching from the moment she hit the water, maybe even before, which made the question she'd been avoiding impossible to ignore. Was the boy's fall an accident at all? The envelope from Daniel sat on her counter, still sealed. Her hands itched to open it, but the image of his thin smile stopped her. Instead, she grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. If she wanted answers, she'd have to start where the whole thing began, the pier. The night air was colder than she remembered. Most of the shops along the boardwalk were closed, the street lamps casting long shadows across the empty planks. She reached the spot where she jumped in. The water below was black, moving with the slow pull of the tide. Something white caught at the edge of a piling. A scrap of fabric snagged on a rusty nail. She knelt, pulling it free. It was small, soft, patterned with faded rockets and stars. A child's pajama sleeve. The sleeve. Kayla turned the damp scrap over in her hands. It was frayed at the edge, the fabric stiff from salt water. She didn't need a DNA test to know it belonged to the boy she remembered seeing rockets and stars on his pajama top when she held him against her after the rescue. But there was one problem. When she'd pulled him from the water, he'd been wearing a blue t-shirt, not pajamas. Her pulse quickened. That meant the pajama sleeve had been torn before the rescue, before the cameras, before she was anywhere near the pier. She snapped a photo and sent it to her manager. He wasn't dressed like this when I pulled him out. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. Kayla pocketed the sleeve and stood scanning the dark edges of the pier. Somewhere in the shadows, wood creaked softly. Looking for something? The voice came from behind her, low, controlled. She turned to find Cole Stratham standing a few feet away, hands in his coat pockets, just like in the photo. Under the yellow street lamp, his eyes were unreadable. You were there, Kayla said. On the pier, watching. I watch a lot of things, Cole replied. It's my job. She took a step closer. Whose job, Daniel's? Because if you're following me, you might as well tell him I'm not scared. Cole's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. You should be. He glanced at the fabric in her hand. Where'd you find that? Right where someone left it, she said. Doesn't match what the boy was wearing when I pulled him out. Care to explain? Cole's jaw flexed. Not here. He stepped past her toward the water, scanning the pilings, as if looking for something else. Go home, Kayla. Stop asking questions you don't want the answers to. But as he turned to leave, he added quietly, check the security feed from the pier. 2 hours before you went live. Kayla's breath caught. Why? But Cole was already walking away, swallowed by the dark. She stood alone, the sleeve clutched tight in her hand, knowing she'd just been given a thread one that could unravel everything. The footage. It took 3 favors, 2 lies, and 1 reluctant night guard before Kayla finally sat in the cramped pier security office, staring at a dusty monitor. The guard slid a USB drive into the port and queued up the feed from the night in question. 2 hours before you went live, he muttered, clicking the timeline back. The grainy black and white image flickered to life. At first the pier was almost empty, a few late-night fishermen, a couple walking slowly toward the boardwalk. Then a small figure appeared at the far edge of the frame. The boy, alone. Kayla leaned forward. Where's his dad? The guard shrugged. Keep watching. The boy wandered near the railing, peering over at the water. Moments later, another figure entered the frame from the left, tall, broad-shouldered. Even in the low-res image, Kayla recognized Cole Stratham's stance instantly. Cole crouched beside the boy, speaking to him. The child shook his head. Cole reached into his coat, pulling something out, too blurry to make out, and the boy stepped back. Kayla's fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. Then Daniel Reeve walked into frame. Not rushing, not panicked, calm, controlled. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, glanced over the railing at the dark water, and said something. The boy shook his head again. Daniel's hand slid from the boy's shoulder to the back of his neck. Not violent, but firm. He leaned down, spoke close to the boy's ear, and the boy's small frame seemed to fold inward. Cole looked away, scanning the pier. A few minutes later, the 3 of them walked off camera together, away from the water. And just like that, the footage jumped forward. The next time the boy appeared, it was in Kayla's live stream, slipping beneath the edge of the pier. The guard frowned. There's a gap here. Almost 90 minutes missing from the file. Kayla's mind spun. 90 minutes in which the boy had changed clothes. 90 minutes before he ended up in the water again. And 2 men, one powerful, one dangerous, who both knew exactly how to make that time vanish. She stood the chair, scraping behind her. I need a copy of that. The guard hesitated. If they find out, they will, Kayla said, sliding a folded bill across the desk. But not before I do something with it. The missing 90 minutes. Daniel Reeve's penthouse was all glass and shadows. The skyline stretched behind him like a trophy case as he poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if she wanted one. Kayla didn't sit. She slid the USB drive across the polished black table. Security footage from the pier, she said. 2 hours before I went live. Daniel's expression didn't flicker. Is this supposed to scare me? It's supposed to make you talk, Kayla replied. About why your son was there alone. About why he changed clothes. About what happened in the 90 minutes missing from this file. Daniel took a slow sip, then set the glass down. You don't understand the position you put yourself in. Kayla stepped closer. Try me. He studied her for a long moment, then exhaled. That night wasn't an accident. My son wasn't supposed to fall. He was supposed to be seen. The words landed heavy in the room. Seen by who? By the people I wanted watching, Daniel said. Competitors who needed to believe I was vulnerable, that my family was within their reach, that they could touch me. Kayla's stomach turned. You used your own kid as bait. Daniel's eyes hardened. He was never in danger until you showed up. She stared at him, disbelief curdling into anger. I pulled him out of the water. I saved him. You disrupted an arrangement, Daniel said coldly, one that took months to set up. And now, the people I wanted to expose know I was playing them, which means they'll come for me differently, harder. And if they can't get to me, they'll go for your son, Kayla finished. Daniel's jaw tightened. And anyone associated with him, including you. The implications sank in. Her live stream hadn't just gone viral, it had painted a target on her back. Why tell me this, she asked. Because now you have a choice, Daniel said. Disappear and I'll make sure they forget you exist. Or stay and accept that you're in the middle of something that will get ugly fast. Kayla met his gaze, pulse steady. I've been underestimated my whole life. I'm not disappearing. For the first time, a faint smirk tugged at Daniel's mouth. Then I hope you're ready to play at my level. Kayla turned to leave the city lights burning in the glass behind them. She didn't need to look back to know Daniel was already making calls. Outside, the wind off the water cut sharp against her skin. She pulled out her phone and opened a new live feed, not for followers, not for fame, but for proof. If they came for her, the whole world would see it. Somewhere in the distance, the pier lights flickered, and Kayla knew this was only the beginning. The end or just the start of the real story.